What made you walk out of an interview? I was being interviewed for a business analyst position and the interview was already strange. They had me waiting for 40 minutes and then the interview was done by two people. One asked if I could be any animal, what would it be? Now, I believed this to be an extremely odd question for such a role, and I responded that I wasn't sure how my connection with an animal would apply to this job. Further into the interview, I was asked what the difference between a data scientist and a data analyst was, and I said the most textbook answer I could and said I'd consider a data analyst like a nurse and a data scientist like a doctor. The analyst will have lots of experience with front-end analysis and observation, while the scientist will be more adept at in-depth-wise predictions, etc. Which is why one is paid X2-3 the other. The woman who asked stated how extremely offended she was at my statement and rambled for about 5 minutes. At this point, I stood up, said thank you for your time, but I'm going to pursue other options and left. I really wanted this job. I prepped for a week and a half for the interview. Go in, met with two people, it's going great. 45 minutes later they tell me that position had already been filled, but they liked me enough for a position that was part-time and half the salary, which also meant no benefits. It was like going to a shoe store saying you need a 7.5 in black and the guy comes back and says, yeah, we don't have a 7.5, but here's a 12 in green you can try. If the job is no longer available, delete it from your site. Don't play people and waste their time. Lol, guess I'm still a little sore about this. Common practice. That position was never open. Just bait for the lesser position. I was a crew chief in a warehouse at my previous job. The interviewer read this on my resume and thought it said crew chef and asked me if this was a joke. I politely corrected him and explained my previous position. He didn't believe me, but continued with the interview anyways. As the interview went on, I quickly realized that the interviewer was in fact one of the supervisors in this facility and that not only did he fundamentally not understand the freight industry, but he could barely read or spell. I knew there was no way I could work under this guy, so I stood up, thanked him for his time and left. He told me I was an idiot and was throwing away an incredible opportunity. I didn't even turn around to acknowledge him. It felt like a bad comedy sketch. I had this happen with a teacher at the community college once. He gave me a bad grade on my first paper, which surprised me because I got stellar scores in App English in high school. Turns out I was writing above his reading level, and he hated that. Turned out to be a door-to-door sales position. Just interrupted their pitch, told them I wasn't interested and left. Let me guess, 100% commission? And you probably have to buy their product to sell. Well, gosh darn it, who wouldn't want to buy those encyclopedias? Didn't even make it to the interview. I had applied for a marketing company through ZipRecruiter. Within 5 minutes I had an email, text, call, and voicemail from the company. I had applied for this job while at work, so I had to wait a few minutes to sneak outside to call back. No answer. Left a message. Sent an email, no response. Sent a text, no response. 2 days later get a call and email saying, hey, we haven't heard back. Please visit this link to schedule an interview. I click link and it has interview times from 9 to 1 every 30 minutes and I can't leave for lunch until 1 at the earliest. Again I call to see if I can schedule for 1:30 and no response. I just ended up scheduling an interview and not showing up. They actually called the next day to see if I forgot, and I told them my situation and the lady just said OG=H. Sorry, I haven't really checked my messages recently, and I just said thanks but no thanks. Was invited to an interview through Monster for a job I hadn't applied for. I was desperate at the time, and I said fuck it, I'll go and give it a shot. Walked into a small commercial building, and there were 7 or 8 folding chairs in a small entrance area with a hallway and a couple small offices attached. There were 5 older folks, mid-40s. I was around 23 at the time, and they all had clipboards. A woman walked through the hall and says hello, hands me a clipboard and to fill out the info. It was super weird. Asking for more personal and financial questions than I was willing to offer. Stuck around anyways for the interview. Office was set up super suspiciously, like they'd thrown a painting on the wall, plant in the corner and that's it. Finally sit down with the dude interviewing me. He kept talking about this big opportunity and to get in now, while the getting is good, blah blah. Never actually dictated what the job actually was. Realized it was a goddamn pyramid scheme almost immediately. I stopped dude mid-sentence and told him I appreciated the time, but I'm going to have to pass. He was baffled. I then walked outside to the 5 or 6 people sitting there and told them all, while dude's door still ajar, that it was a pyramid scheme and to take the sheets of paper they were filling out and rip them up or take them with them. They all looked much like myself, desperate. I felt horrible for them. Didn't stick around to see if any of them left or not. Total sketch. Had an interview for a warehouse supervisor. Arrived a little early and front desk had me go over to the shipping department office and wait for the operations manager. Sat down by his office and overheard him having his meeting with other supervisors and leads. Heard screaming and throwing of stuff. Constant degrading vocabulary. Noped out of there quickly. Was contacted for a position in a nearby town. Put on the suit, etc. and got there about 20 minutes early. There were 4 other people in the reception area. No worries, I was confident in my skills. Soon enough I met with my interviewer. We went over my credentials and background, and I was asked career relevant questions. Then about 15 minutes into the interviewer said something which I found a little odd, so I asked for clarification. It was then that I was told it was for a sales job, specifically a cold calling sales job. They started extolling the virtues of a career change. I said something along the lines of this not being the position I was led to believe, and left the room. As I was leaving, one of the interviewers made a remark about me making a big mistake. I stopped in the lobby on the way out and made the general announcement that whatever job they were here to interview for, it's actually a cold call sales job. About 2/3 of the people in the room got up and left with me, and I got a bunch of glares from the workers there. When I got back outside, I parked my car near the entrance and told anyone who looked like they were going in for an interview that it was a cold sales job. I was there for about 45 minutes before a police car rolled up and had me move along. One of the people in the office heard what I was doing and called them. They called the police on the guy who was waiting to interview after me. He was just a Native American dude sitting in this hotel lobby. The job was at a hotel. The guy interviewing me saw him, brought me into his office, and then called the cops and said there was a homeless guy who wouldn't leave the lobby. I tried to explain that I had talked to him and that he was also applying for the job, but the guy didn't care. I just said, "Wow man, I don't want to work for a place like this," and left. He seemed genuinely stunned and angry that I walked out. Nice one. When I was in high school, the White Castle down the street was hiring. I lived in a bad area and it was open 24/7. I went in and applied, but let them know that I was in school and couldn't do overnights because of that and because of the area. They assured me that this was fine and that they could get me in after school and out before midnight. I go in for interview/orientation on a Tuesday afternoon around 6, and they've got the schedule set. I'm on after orientation, 9 PM to 3 AM or some shit. So, I pull the shift lead aside like, "Hey, I was told that, because of my school situation, I wouldn't be on overnights. I'm on the schedule for overnight tonight. I have school tomorrow, and I wasn't even aware I'd have a shift today. I was told it was just orientation. How do we fix this?" She goes, "Well, everybody gotta work overnight. It is what it is." I went, "Gotcha. Thanks for your time." Took off the apron, handed it to her, and left her and the rest of the orientation group, who were stunned. I had an interview last year. Teaching gig. The principal in charge of the interview was an hour late. That alone irritated me, but he showed up, and we started the interview 5 minutes in, and he says, "Hey, let's walk around the campus. I'll show you around." That wasn't a big deal. We just walked and talked. The problem is that every time he saw someone, he'd stop and spend at least 5 minutes talking to them, regardless of whether or not I was done answering questions. I was there 2.5 hours for that interview. I said no. For some people that sounds like a dream. If the boss doesn't give much of a ref. Sounds like you'd get a free ride and a relaxing flexible work if the pay was good. I applied for a middle school science teacher position in a pretty bad inner city school district. Sat down in the principal's office, and she had my resume, application, all my supplemental paperwork in a folder. When I walked in, she closed the folder, moved it to the side, and said, "I'm sure you're very qualified. I haven't even read through this. I'm going to offer you this position on the spot because you're male and over 6 feet tall. I don't need a teacher. I need someone to control the kids in the classroom. Will you take the job?" Thanked her for her time and couldn't get out of there fast enough. Well, at least she was honest, I guess. Geez, that's bad. I went to an interview and was ushered into an office that clearly did not belong to the interviewer in the ill-fitting suit. After a few minutes it became clear that this marketing job was clearly a sales role. As a marketing grad who specializes in analytics, I wish people would stop listing sales jobs as marketing positions. In some places it's illegal to lie on an application. How come it's not illegal for employers to lie about the jobs they are hiring for? The position had been advertised as a $7 per hour waitressing job, which would be absolutely stunning due to 99% of serving jobs being $2 an hour. Drove 45 minutes. Halfway through the interview, I asked about the pay, since it was unusual for a restaurant to not try to pay the absolute minimum. Was expecting to hear that maybe they didn't do tipping, or maybe that they just felt strongly about making changes to serving culture or something. Oh, no, it's the $2/HR, obviously. But, oh, the ad said $7. He rolled his eyes, then goes, "Well, yeah, you're gonna make $7 after tips." He knew full well what it looked like in the ad to say it was $7/HR. I was disgusted, got up and left. $2/HR I can deal with. Tricking people into applying by making it look way better than it is. No bueno. Pretty early into the interview she pointed out I had a gap in employment, which was the 6 weeks between when I graduated in May and when I started in July. She asked me to explain it, and I told her I signed with them in April before I graduated to start in July, and took those weeks to get all my moving done and getting settled into a new town. She told me I would have to resubmit my application with an explanation for why I have that gap in employment. At this point it was 6 years prior, and they shouldn't have passed me on for an interview without it. She also had zero sense of humor, took everything very seriously, and was dogmatic about how the company operates. This was to be my supervisor. She read some behavioral question about a situation, can't remember specifically, and I asked her to elaborate on the circumstances, and she just repeated the question verbatim without looking up from the sheet. It was at that point I sat back, sighed, and said, "I don't think this is going to be a good fit, but thank you for your time." She dumped my papers into the trash bin next to her desk and said, "Well, thanks for wasting my afternoon." I shook my head and walked out. I was gonna try to wait tables at a local IHOP. Was already not excited because the place was infamous for danger, but I needed the money. Walked to the interview a half mile and over a highway overpass to show up 10 minutes early. Sat for 40 minutes waiting for the manager. He's got no paperwork, can't find my application. We sit down and he starts asking the cookie cutter questions from memory. He's not writing anything down, but that's fine. About 10 minutes in he gets called into the kitchen. I patiently wait 8 more minutes before letting a member of the staff know I was leaving. He catches me at the front door and asks, "So you don't want the position?" I told him, "No. I understand that you're busy, but I've been here for an hour and I've only spent 10 minutes with you." He apologized and I accepted it. I felt bad for the guy, but I have to look out for myself too. We see you like to dress pretty and do your makeup. Would you be able to actually work hard and hustle? Asked by a man in front of a few other men to me, a female. Firstly, I'm allowed to make an effort for an interview at a corporate company. Secondly, the fact that I look the way I look has nothing to do with my ability to work hard. You wouldn't ask that to a man. So go to hell. This still bothers me till this day. I felt so uncomfortable. They asked how much I expected for the position, laughed, and said, "Well, good luck, because I'm not going to pay you that much." I responded with, "Good luck finding a suitable candidate for any less." They emailed me the next day offering me the position. I declined. FK yes. Good on you. We need more persons like you. Applied for an operations manager role. Everything sounds great. Then I get to the interview and realize it's some scheme. They say they want me to learn the system first, 100% commission selling some kind of kiosk. I ask if there was some confusion. I was applying to a manager role. They tell me, oh, you have to be a top dog to get that. We don't just hire that role. I stood up and walked out without saying a single word. The whole thing reeked. Oddly enough, a few days later they call up screaming asking where I was and that I was late on my first day. I hung up and never heard back.